I think we've generally not had large losses relative to capital. The largest loss we've ever had, either in the partnership in Berkshire, probably was 2% of net worth. So the nature of not doing very many things and being careful about them probably will keep you from making big errors of commission. Now, errors of omission are the ones that are the big sins. And I wrote in a report a couple of years ago, I've got a thing in my report called Mistake du Jour, and I managed to come up with one every year too. And I started out to buy Fannie Mae, for example, back in 1988 or so. And for one reason or another, I just didn't follow through. We'd have made about $1.5 billion on that. I think we made about $5 million. Those are the mistakes you don't see. The mistakes you don't see are, in our case, are way bigger than the mistakes that you see. We owned 5% of the Walt Disney Company in 1966. The whole Walt Disney Company was selling for $80 million in 1966, debt-free. $4 million bought us 5% of the company. They spent $17 million on the Pirates ride in 1966 building. Here was a company selling at less than 5 times rides, and they had a lot of rides. I mean, that is cheap. I remember the knock on it on Wall Street that was that they were earning a lot of money that year, and it was Mary Poppins, and that there wasn't anything coming next year. And I remember I went to see Mary Poppins at a theater on Broadway, about 45th. At about 2 in the afternoon, I've got a little attaché case and everything. I'm going to see Mary Poppins. I got up to this woman at the ticket booth, and I said, "I've got a kid around here someplace. I'm taking it." I was going to see if I thought this thing could be run over and over again in the future. But here they were. They had 200 and some films of one sort or another in the can at that point. They had 300 acres down in Anaheim with Disneyland drawing at that time 9 million people a year, and the whole place was selling for $80 million. So we bought 5% for $4 million. And the great news is we sold 5% for $6 million about a year later. That 5% now would be worth about $1 billion. But you don't see that. That conventional accounting doesn't pick that up. That's the kind of mistake I made. Yeah.
Mr. Buffett, what prompted you to make an investment in U.S. Air, given the fact that this is such a cutthroat industry and certainly not transparent and easily understandable?
Well, I think probably the best answer is temporary insanity. The fellow who runs the U.S. Air is a wonderful guy. But he just happens to be in an extraordinarily tough business. And the interesting thing is, I'd actually written something for Graham's book in the early 70s about how the airline business was about the toughest business there was. And the interesting thing, of course, is that if you go back to the time, and we're in the right state for that, if we go back to the time of Kitty Hawk, net, the airline transport business in the United States has made no money. I mean, just think if you'd been down there at Kitty Hawk and you'd seen this guy go up, and all of a sudden this vision hits you that tens of millions of people would be doing this all over the world someday, and it would bring us all closer together. And you think, my God, this is something to be in on. And despite putting in billions and billions and billions of dollars, the net return to owners from being in the entire airline industry, if you'd owned it all, and you put up all this money, is less than zero. If there had been a capitalist down there, the guy should have shot down Wilbur. I mean, one small step for mankind and one huge step backwards for capitalism. But anyway, so along comes 1989, and I've got a lot of cash, and no one misled me in any way, shape, or form. I mean, this is 100% my decision, and I put money in it, and Seth Schofield, you can't find a better human being or manager than Seth Schofield, but he is operating with revenues based on market factors and costs that are not based on market factors, and that's a recipe for a lot of trouble. So I now have this 800 number, and if I ever get the urge to buy an airline stock, I dial this number and I say, "My name is Warren, I'm an airaholic," and then this guy talks me down on the other end.
Warren Buffett's approach to investing removes the worry of predicting where the stock market's going to go. He simply pays no attention to it. In this next section, you'll see why and why he considers owning the stock the next best thing to owning the company. He also responds to student questions about recent trends in banking consolidation, about investing outside of the United States, and about how to judge the franchise value of a company.
I never think about what the stock market is going to do. Because if Walt Disney had come to me in 1966 and said, and it was a private company, said, would you like to buy 5% of this company for $4 million? I would not think about what the stock market was going to do. I would think about what I thought the Walt Disney Company was going to do over time. And if in 1988, Roberto Goizueta, let's say Coca-Cola had been private, and he'd come to me and said, you want to buy 6.25% of the Coca-Cola Company for $1 billion, you know, I would look at the Coca-Cola Company. So if something appears to me to be intelligent to do, I'm not going to forego doing it because I or anybody else has an opinion about the stock market. If Alan Greenspan came up and whispered in my ear and said, you know, I think bonds are going to do this or that, and then therefore stocks will, I wouldn't pay any attention, not because I don't respect Alan Greenspan. It's just I'm not going to trade something I know how to do and give up something I know how to do because of some opinion about something I don't know how to do. And I don't know how to predict the stock market. I don't know how to predict interest rates. I don't know how to predict business. All I know is if I buy the right kind of business, the right price, with the right people, I'll do well over time. And in stocks, it's very hard to know when something will happen, and it's very easy to know what will happen. And we bought See's Candy in 1971 or 2. That wouldn't be familiar too much on the East Coast here, but it's very dominant in boxed chocolates on the West Coast. When it so happened that a grandson of the founder wanted to sell the company. Now, I wouldn't think about what the stock market's going to do when I try and decide whether to buy See's chocolates. What I'm thinking about is whether Russell Stover can knock them out of the box, or whether you can raise your prices periodically as you go along, how strong their hold is on people who are chocolate consumers in the West. And if that's my attitude toward buying 100% of a business like See's, it's also going to be my attitude toward buying 6% of a business like Coca-Cola. In other words, why in the world should I pass up the chance? Coca-Cola went public in either 19 or 20, I think 19, at $40 a share. The Candler family had sold it. They sold it through I guess it would have been then J.P. Morgan, the predecessor company, and the trust company of Georgia, which is now part of SunTrust. The fee was $200,000 and some for this $25 million offering, and Morgan took theirs in cash. The trust company of Georgia took theirs in stock. So you'll see on the trust company of Georgia or SunTrust balance sheet a little item, investment in Coca-Cola with a cost of $110,000. It's worth a little over $1 billion now. And subsequent to going public, the stock went down 50%, over 50%. That's when Mr. Woodruff came back from Cleveland, where he was working with a white motor company, and they brought him back to run it. They had a problem with the bottlers because of some contractual arrangements. They'd made a bad deal back in 1899 in terms of the original